Hi! This time I wanted to talk about running campaigns in tabletop role-playing games. This is not going to be a technical advice sort of video. Rather, these are my thoughts on the challenges that you experience when trying to organize or when you are trying to run a campaign. This is based on my own personal experience. I also want to talk about some general thoughts. And I think this video could get a bit philosophical. It could go into some tangents, but I think it is all connected. I think that in current times, running campaigns is more challenging than ever. There are many players that have played many campaigns throughout the years, but most of those campaigns, in my opinion, are incomplete. They never reach the conclusion of the campaign. For one reason or the other, maybe a player dropped out of the campaign, one or more players needed to drop out for personal reasons related to their job, to their family, perhaps to their health. In other cases, the game master is not able to run the campaign anymore. For the same reasons, could be something related to his job, health, family. But there are also some more important differences. I think there is just so much when it comes to division, when it comes to ideologies. I mentioned in my video where I talked about... I think it was the video where I talked about our role-playing games conversations. I think that was the one. I think so. But I mentioned that it was always like that. There was this attempt in the media, in politics, in society to control people, because some those that look to the past with the meme of using rose-colored glasses, they think that the good old days were better, but they had this veil upon them. It's just like that the crap that was falling upon society, upon people, it just became too much. Like I said, in the past, there was a lot of religious propaganda. The obvious sign of it when it comes to role-playing games being the Christian panic. The ones that try to hide the real cause of it, they call it the satanic panic, but it was not the satanic panic, because Satanists were not organizing that madness. It was the Christians who said that if you played role-playing games, you were a Satanist and all of that. So you could see that in the past there was still this programming, and especially if you wanted to homeschool your kids, they had that indoctrination of go to school, stay in school. You know how that turned out. Just look at the madness in schools. If you give them an inch, you might as well give them a mile. So yes, in the past there was still a lot of programming, a lot of control, cybernetics. But it was like taking a bucket and they started to pour dirty water into the bucket. And some people were like, let's say the meme boomer generation, they were like, oh, it's not too bad. But they let the water accumulate, and now we have this overflowing dirty water everywhere. So in current times, there is a lot of division when it comes to ideologies, when it comes to being in the left, in the right, liberals, conservatives, in religion. Religion is the same as politics. Or you could say that politics are also, it's also a form of religion. They are cults. So one side thinks that he or she is in the right, or the same for this other side. And when you play tabletop role-playing games, sometimes there are clashes because of the differences in ideologies. They also try to put many politics related to gender and to control, freedom. They try to insert everything into a campaign. That's why people clash so many times. It's also related to that madness of the consent form. It's always great to have a session zero so that everyone gets into the same idea, rather than a division of a conception of what a role-playing game should be. Everyone comes to terms or into harmony as to what is going to be presented in the campaign. But there is a lot of catering or enabling of getting insane people to keep on playing role-playing games. The typical example, the meme example of being afraid of an imaginary spider, you have to understand that, well, I think most of you do, but perhaps there are some that are unaware that they are merchants. The ones that sell the more, let's call it, popular role-playing games, they are merchants. They do not care about the mental health of people. So if there's someone who is insane and thinks that if the imaginary spider is going to do something to your imaginary character, something is going to happen to you in real life, they are not going to try to help that person. They just want to keep on selling products. So they come up with these forms of consent that, having imaginary spiders in a game of going into ruins and dungeons is bad and all of that. So yeah, instead of telling the person, hey, do you actually think that you need help? I have actually had someone who told me that killing player characters was bad because the player in real life could commit suicide. If there is a player that wants to commit suicide because his or her player character died in the game, that player should not be playing role-playing games. That player needs professional help. So yes, there's a lot of, like I said, a lot of madness that also causes division. So in current times, there are those challenges. Sometimes people, it's not easy to find a group that you can play with them for long. A lot of times you play one-shots before the conflicts rise to the surface. I think that's why there are so many channels that have those horror RPG stories, or those horror stories related to campaigns, etc., where things fall apart quite in a very ugly way, because there is a lot of material to come up with those, or rather tell those stories. So I think there are some possible solutions. I'm not going to talk about the most obvious ones of playing with the people that you enjoy being with, friends and family. But if you are someone that is trying to find like a improvised group or pickup group to try to start a campaign and try to keep that campaign going, you have to get into the idea, into the mindset that maybe that campaign could die at any moment. For one reason or the other, because of some unexpected conflicts, the campaign could die. Someone could drop out, the group could get into some sort of serious argument. So I think that as long as you try to find enjoyment within that fleeting moment, perhaps you get to play 2 or 3 adventures or 4 within the campaign, and the campaign actually was supposed to last 18 adventures. If you find satisfaction, as long as you find satisfaction within playing those few adventures, I think that's okay. You could be like, oh well, everything was going fine until adventure 5, and then this player started to harass the group because they said something that was against his or her sensibilities or political mindset, etc., or religion or whatever. As long as you consider that to be like the normal thing, I think you won't be too troubled or disturbed when playing campaigns. But I enjoy campaigns so much in current times, mostly because of scheduling issues and because of how busy life can get. I usually play very short campaigns or one-shots, and I really miss those days where you could play a campaign for 1 or 2 years. I think there are some very lucky groups. I've heard some people saying that they have this campaign going for who knows how long, or that they have been playing separate campaigns, and even though some people go on a trip or they have to work in this other country, they still play online and they continue the campaign, they keep going. That's great. Although I do find it a bit disheartening for those people that have never experienced a physical role-playing game. There are players, I can't believe that there are people that have never played in a physical table with others. They only use the computer, they play online, and it's not the same thing. At least that's what I would say. I think there are some people that have become so used to playing online that they have forgotten about. I would even call it like an energy field that is created at the table, where the fiction is reinforced by that, I would say, the unexplainable vibration between people. When you play face to face with others in a physical environment, it feels like you are creating this energy field, and the adventure feels so real, so amazing. There is simply no way to match that behind a computer screen, in my opinion. Some of my happiest moments have been playing campaigns, long campaigns, and taking advantage of the physical environment. I remember this was a long time ago. I think it was a bit before going into high school. We were running, I think that the longest campaigns that I have played in my life were in Forgotten Realms and Ravenloft. And we were playing those in those worlds, in those settings. But we wanted to create like a more atmospheric way of playing. And we were thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we had like a tent inside of the house? But at the time we didn't have like your typical camping tent, and we did have one, but it was very small, so it wasn't quite suitable to play Dungeons and Dragons. It was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition within that tent. So we were thinking, how can we create that atmosphere? Because in the case of Faerun, the Forgotten Realms, we were going into the Underdark, and in Ravenloft, because Ravenloft is such a dark and terrifying setting, you also had those moments where you wanted to be like inside some place because you felt like you were surrounded by ghouls and ghosts and vampires and monsters. So we wanted to create like a certain, I think you could call it like a cozy atmosphere. So what we did, we were playing in my room. I had two beds. We separated the two beds, and we placed the sheet and the covers on top. It was quite cold, so it wouldn't get too hot. We used like heavy books to create a sort of like a tarp between the two beds, and we started to play within that cramped space. Because we had a lot of space. We were kids. Well, we were like 14, kind of like that. We had a lot of space when it comes to the floor. Of course, you need to play like a bit in a lotus position, sitting down. But we felt as if we were actually playing inside of like your typical tent in a Dungeons and Dragons camping environment. But because we were playing in the underground of the Underdark, the tunnels also felt quite claustrophobic. And when it comes to Ravenloft, because we had the light in the ceiling turned on, we used a sheet in that occasion. It was semi-transparent, not your typical opaque sheet. You could kind of look through it a bit. The light came through the sheet, and it felt like there was never truly some source of daylight. The sun felt like obscured by the mists of Ravenloft. So it was perfect. It was perhaps not the most comfortable environment. It definitely beat using the smaller tent, and that tent was this like dark green color. So we would never have that same effect because the sheet that we used was kind of like white or beige, more or less. So it was a very interesting. Yes, it was quite atmospheric, using some very common things from the house. And I loved playing those campaigns. It was also quite surprising because it was the first time that we actually played Dungeons and Dragons as a social experience that is not about interacting with other players, but it's more like there was very little combat. Because the players were quite paranoid about Ravenloft. We were playing that time the Grim Harvest Adventure Path or Trilogy of Adventures. There are a lot of enemies that can drain your levels of experience. I don't want to spoil things, but there are some very simple weapons that basically any thug can wield. And if they get you with those weapons, they drain a level. So the players were quite paranoid. They were researching everything. They were scouting everything. They spent most of the time interacting with the hostile game world of Ravenloft. They were even more eager to speak with the commoners and even potential spies later on when the Kargat came into play. They were still willing to risk talking to many non-player characters and planning things ahead quite carefully so that they wouldn't lose those experience levels. We actually had to have many side adventures or side quests to recover those lost levels. And yes, that campaign is quite deadly. There are many times where it's very easy to get a total party kill, so when you get level drained, you really need to recover those experience points. So I think it's very important to try to enjoy campaigns, even if they do not last for long. Those adventures that you play, even if the campaign never reaches a conclusion, they are still very impactful and powerful memories. I think campaigns are going to have that, yes, almost transcendental influence upon the rest of your gaming career. I've heard of people that hate campaigns, but that also speaks about how campaigns had a great impact upon them. Maybe something went wrong with their group, or they didn't like the long-term solutions for a particular system. But regardless, even if the campaign is bad or good, it's going to remain with you for the rest of your life. It's going to contain some important lessons. I think there are still many players that do their best to play campaigns even within the challenges that I mentioned. You can look for some campaigns here in YouTube. In fact, the 28mm RPG, he's still running his Traveler campaign. He's doing his best to continue the campaign, so that's great. Although, like I said, I hope that many players in the current generations, they do their best to play the campaign in a physical environment. It's definitely not the same thing. I would definitely argue in favor of playing outside of the computer screen. And besides that, I also think that it's not healthy to be constantly bombarded with the light of smartphones, the computer. It's better to keep things sometimes a bit more bohemian, more primitive. I think it's fine if you have like the device on the side, but constantly looking at the screen, well, that is up to you. Like I said, it's the current technology also represents a certain advantage. I also enjoy using the computer for my games, but I try to keep things as low-tech as possible, and I spent most of the time behind my Game Master screen. Well, thank you for watching this video. I would love to hear your thoughts about campaigns, if your experiences match my experiences, if you think that those challenges have affected you in some way, or if they are no trouble for you at all. Maybe you have found many ways to bypass those things. Anything that you want to share about campaigns, I would love to read it in the comment section, or if you want to make a video response or whatever. Thank you for watching this video. I would also like to know if you prefer one-shots or campaigns. Maybe there are people that love one-shots, and campaigns, they're simply not their thing. So once again, thank you for watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.